Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Leverage, and today myself and my research partner, Jackie Warner, will be talking to you about dietary iron intake and menstrual irregularities in recreational female athletes. Before we begin, I'd like to take this time to clarify that we do not have any conflicts of interest to disclose. The specific question that we decided on to research throughout practicum is, what is the correlation between dietary iron intake and the prevalence of menstrual irregularities in recreational female athletes? Although I touched on these definitions in our first presentation during practicum, I'd like to briefly go over them for anyone who needs a refresher. So when we say recreational female athlete, what we mean is a biological female who exercises for at least 150 minutes per week at a moderate to vigorous intensity. When we say menstrual irregularities, what we mean is anything other than a normal period. This can include missed, delayed, or erratic periods or abnormal bleeding patterns. As you can see in the bulleted list, there are various menstrual irregularities that females in general can encounter. So I shared why this topic is important to Jackie and I during our Practicum 1 presentation, so I won't go through all of that information again, but I did want to touch on the fact that regardless of your gender or your athletic status, iron is needed for growth and development, and our bodies use iron to make hemoglobin, which carries oxygen from the lungs to all parts of the body. So because iron plays such an integral role in the transport of oxygen, it is super important in athletes as we need sufficient oxygen transport to enable our muscles to execute work. Iron is especially important for athletes due to the high work demands placed on their muscles during training. Biological females are more likely than males to have an iron deficiency because they lose blood during menstruation. That said, women generally need more iron than men. Finally, to tie all of that together, iron is especially important in female athletes because females are more likely than males to suffer from iron deficiency due to iron loss during menstruation. It's imperative that females in general consume an adequate amount of iron. Female athletes specifically need to account for a loss of iron due to menstruation, as well as decreased iron due to exercise-associated iron loss. So a common theme throughout our research has been the fact that female athletes are underrepresented in sports science research. Because of this, many studies that have been done in regard to dietary iron intake in athletes have been done using biological male subjects. The results obtained from these studies using men are not easily transferable to females due to the differing physiology. To better understand the effects of dietary iron status on menstrual irregularities experienced, Jackie and I have determined our research objective to be assessing for a relationship between dietary iron intake and menstrual irregularities in recreational female athletes. So in order to meet our research objective, we developed a cross-sectional study consisting of a survey that was distributed via email that was approved by MSU Denver's Institutional Review Board. All subjects who participated in our study thus far have provided informed consent. After receiving IRB approval, we were able to recruit participants to take our survey. In order to recruit participants meeting our inclusion criteria, we distributed the survey to MSU Denver nutrition students, Regis University physical therapy students, and friends and family who are connected with Jackie and myself on social media. So this flyer that you see on the screen, we used this in our emails as well as in our social media posts so that participants could determine whether or not they met our inclusion criteria and could easily access the survey via a QR code. The survey or the flyer also includes the contact information of the MSU Denver IRB. So far, 39 participants have given their consent, but only 31 of those 39 participants' responses that we've received have met our inclusion criteria, which includes being 20 to 45 years of age, being biologically female, being a recreational female athlete, having not been pregnant within the last 6 months, and has fully completed the survey. So the survey that was distributed via email consisted of 2 parts. a dietary iron food frequency questionnaire, and a female health questionnaire. Because our IRB approval came in a bit later than we had anticipated, we are collecting data for about another week until March 15th. So we started February 12th and we wanted it to be about a month of time for collection. Although we have surpassed our original N of 30, we are hoping to receive as many responses as possible. As mentioned before, we could only use 31 of the 39 responses that we have received so far due to failure to adequately complete the survey, as well as not meeting our inclusion criteria. So the first part of the survey consisted of a dietary iron food frequency questionnaire, which we adapted from the National Cancer Institute. In this survey, participants were asked 26 open-ended questions about iron-containing foods. As you'll see in this table on the right, each group of products, which I've outlined in red, or each group of products consists of subgroups. I've outlined the subgroups in red. Participants were asked to provide their estimated weekly number of servings of each of those subgroups. Although the table does include average iron content per serving size, which I've also highlighted in red, the amount of iron in each serving size was not included on the survey so as not to interfere with answers that the participants provided. The second part of the survey included the female health questionnaire, which was adapted from a previous study. In this survey, participants were given 24 yes/no, Likert scale, and open-ended questions. Definitions of menstrual irregularities were given to determine whether or not participants had experienced any of them. Additionally, age, gender, demographics, exercise habits, previous history of anemia, iron supplementation, and contraceptive use were captured through questions included in the female health questionnaire.
So, discussing the statistical analysis, we originally decided that we were going to use a linear regression. However, when we started receiving survey responses, some of the responses that were included that we had not anticipated kind of made that a little bit messy. So we're actually looking through the data as we collect it and trying to decide if our final analysis will be using a linear regression or a logistical regression. So these are some examples of two of the questions that were included in the female health survey. Excuse me, the female health questionnaire. The first one is a example of what we would use a linear regression to look at. It's something that has two continuous variables and contains a Likert scale. The second question there is what we would use a logistic regression on. One continuous variable, which would be the total iron intake, and then a dichotomous variable, which would basically be a yes or no. So it would be a no if the participant responded that they have not experienced any of these, and it would be a yes if they had selected any of the options of a menstrual irregularity. So our one variable that we are for sure going to use will be the total weekly dietary iron intake, which will be our continuous variable. And then we'll be looking at the menstrual irregularity either in that first question, the Likert scale, or the second question, which is a yes/no dichotomous variable. So some of our preliminary results are that iron intake and in menstrual irregularity, only 12.9% of the participants consumed at or above the RDA, which is 18 milligrams per day. Of the 12.9%, only 25 of these participants reported a menstrual irregularity, and you can see that in the table under group 1. 69% of participants consumed less than 50% of the RDA reported menstrual irregularity. So that would be group 3. And you can see there in the third column, 69% of them were positive for a menstrual irregularity. 65 of the participants that responded reported that they did not know the RDA for a female, which is makes sense in comparison to some of the results that we received. And the average total minutes spent exercising by our participants was about 296 minutes per week, and that varied between moderate to high intensity workouts. So this is just an overview of all 31 participants that we included, and then their total weekly dietary iron intake. That red line through the middle of the graph is the RDA. So you can see that only 4 of the participants ended up in group 1, which is the group that that consumed at or above the RDA per iron. So these are a breakout of the responses that we got from participants in regards to whether or not they were experiencing menstrual irregularities. So you can see that 12 participants had not experienced any menstrual irregularities, and then the breakout for the rest of participants that had experienced them. 1 participant experienced amenorrhea, oligomenorrhea, menorrhagia, and prolonged menstrual bleeding. But most participants experienced just 1 menstrual irregularity. 61% of our participants did report having a menstrual irregularity, and of those 61%, only 6 of them sought advice or help in regards to their irregularities. Also, 20 of the 31 participants indicated that their menstrual period, whether it was irregular or not, did have a negative impact on their physical performance. We do have some limitations to our study. First of all, since it is a survey method, all of our data is self-reported. We actually had to eliminate some of the questions in our responses due to a likely misunderstanding from the survey respondents. Some of the survey questions, like I said, were a little confusing, or maybe they were worded in a way that wasn't super clear for the responses or for the respondents, and we did exclude those responses from our results. And then our iron food frequency questionnaire was validated in Europe, so it did include a lot of uncommon foods in the US, like there was blood sausage or some other, a lot of organ meat and things like that are not as common in the US. And for respondents reading through some of that, it might have been confusing, or they were unsure of how to answer those questions. So preliminarily, we are seeing that there's a lower prevalence of menstrual irregularities in the groups that are consuming more dietary iron. Although, as Jane mentioned, we're still collecting data. We won't be finished until about March 15th. So this is what we have preliminarily. And then after that, we will be able to draw a more whole conclusion for you guys. So thank you for listening today, and we are excited to share the rest of our results with you.